stuff for Guru Nation. What is up with you guys and gals? Dan Sver here. I'm with CEO and co-founder of VersaTrial, Mike Wenger. I've been a advocate for them. I'm not sponsored by them. First of all, shout out to my sponsor, Viva. I feel like I had to wear the sweater interviewing you, even though you guys don't compete at all. But, sites, the public, they just see two tech vendors. Another tech vendor. But shout out to Viva for sponsoring this podcast. eReg for free, sites.viva.com. There's a difference as a site owner with no time for BS. I have no time for BS, Mike. When I hear about something new, I want to hear, okay, is it actually good for me as a site owner? Is it free? Like in many instances, you and Viva, VersaTrial and Viva, you do have a lot in common, even though you do completely different things.
Start with the same letter V. It was it's a good combo.
Wow, what a concept, man. It's also a tough business model. And we can maybe get into some of that, whatever you're comfortable discussing. But, coming off of the Care Access weekend, like the implosion that was, where you see basically a tech vendor make a turn for the worse, I guess. Like, it's important to not group all the tech vendors into the same category. And I think a lot of sites do this. Like, even at conferences, in my head, I'm like, all right, this is a site network. That's a CRO. Ooh, I definitely need to go there. These are vendors. Even though you guys all do different things, we're still like, these are just vendors, but there's another sponsor right there. So we need to separate the good ones from the bad ones. And the way I separate them is like, are they actually doing something good for the site, and are they monetizing? Are they trying to monetize the site? And it doesn't mean they're bad if they are, but is there justification for that money spent? And in VersaTrial's case, it's absolutely free. And I thought it was too good to be true. And then I had a demo with you guys. I was like, all right. But then we're using it every day. When I'm in the office training my staff, Mike, one of my coordinators might be lost. Hey, pull up VersaTrial. I don't remember the name of the IRT. Do you for that study? I don't. I don't remember the IRB either, but it's on VersaTrial. Go pull it up. My CRC told me the other day, thank you for sitting there and doing that with me. Now I see why it's important. VersaTrial. So hats off to you, man. I didn't think we needed another bookmark thing, but hey, it actually works.
It's funny. The very first day of VersaTrial, I kind of had like the idea on paper and kind of was talking to some sites at a conference, one of the Site Solution Summit conferences in Austin, and the vendors wear a different color badge than the sites, and there's a bunch of sites sitting at a lunch table, and I kind of go up and I could just tell they like looked at the color and they're like, oh, vendor coming to sell us something.
I'm gonna sell some.
And I didn't, pitch a solution. I just spoke to some problems. I was like, hey, do you guys, it seems like there's a topic, a talk just earlier about like all the portals and IRTs and EDCs and passwords, and immediately you speak to pain. And then people can kind of say, yeah, like that, I feel that pain. Like that pain is real. It has cognitive load. It makes it really hard to train new folks. I have to go and hold my PI's hand to make sure that they can reset their password for the 100th time. And it's just a lot of, like, I want to spend time with patients. I don't want to get bogged down in just getting into systems or figuring out where to go or getting new credentials for someone that just joined the team. Like that's just busy work that gets a drag and hits on morale. And so the series of events is, you identify the pain with someone, and then you kind of start to walk through like, okay, like here's like a solution. I had kind of a proof of concept prototype to put in front of them. And once you see something and it's simple and it like doesn't feel like, okay, that's a whole new change management heavy system, but it's like, oh, I was kind of already doing that as an individual, but now you're saying I can do that as a team, and I get all these extra other benefits, and it has the clinical research wrapper around it. Like that now feels like, why didn't someone else think of that? I hear that all like, oh, it's so simple. Why didn't someone else think about it? And so that's the next part of the conversation. Then they're sold. And then their face gets a little sad and they say, oh, but like, how much does it cost? Every time I've had this pitch with a site, immediately, like, we don't, we're budget limitations, totally understand the financial challenges of the cash flow of a site operation. And so to come in with, a very expensive SaaS monthly subscription in this environment just doesn't make as much sense, especially if you have a tool that's really valuable for every site out there, whether it's an academic medical center, a hospital, a small brick and mortar site. So early on, we kind of identified, we went from, well, let's do a pilot. Let's, it's free for now. Like, we'll get back to you as we figure this out. We eventually made the commitment and said, we want to do right by sites. We want to build something that sites love to use, that they choose to use. So we don't want, expensive price tag to become a barrier. So we've turned the conversation around and we said, for all those early adopters that bought into what we're trying to do at VersaTrial, we said, can you help us build the business model together? We don't want to be the big bad Facebook that comes in with like the free tool and then you become the product and we're going to sell your data. Like that's not who we are. That's not what we're trying to do. But we need, obviously, to keep the lights on, and the ideal folks to come and keep the lights on is there's this proven business model of going to pharma and CROs who have the larger budgets to work off of. But we need to come up with something that is valuable to them, that gives them, the competitive edge that they're looking for, but also sets you up for success as well as a site and doesn't add to your burden. And that's why what's really nice, what we're going to market now with the pharmaceutical companies that we work with, it's not a, hey, you're going to add to the site's burden. We've already are doing something and implementing something that's reducing their burden, but you can now come in and even take that further and you can help them. Because today you're throwing a lot of stuff at them over email and it's kind of a broken game of telephone. Wouldn't you rather have a better way to hand off all of the credentials, all the systems that they need for your upcoming study in a way that's nicely packaged and something that you can maintain over the course of study as things change, rather than having this broken communication thing, game of telephone where things are breaking down. And a lot of that was shaped by our early site adopters that said, we're going to help you build out this business model together.
Yeah, that's the way to go. Yeah, these studies are getting more complex as you're almost like in the perfect situation for this. I mean, there's more portals than ever being used on your average clinical trial. And then what really impressed me was the feasibility aspect of VersaTrial. Like I was a happy VersaTrial user just with the bookmarks. I didn't even realize till later there's feasibility component, which now I do every feasibility with it. It's almost like it's done automatically. I click a link and VersaTrial knows that I'm doing a survey. Like, this is amazing stuff. It sounds so simple. It can't be that easy to put together. So respect to you guys for making it smooth.
Yeah, the feasibility was a fun one. I knew about site selection, but I didn't know how much work was involved in completing feasibility questionnaires. The first time, whether it's a small site where it's just the owner that's doing it off the side of their desk and they're the only one that can do it, and they go on vacation and you don't get any feasibilities done.
That's me.
Or it's the large site network that are employing 8 people full time. Like I never realized how long they are. On average, it's 92 questions per questionnaire, which is crazy. There are instances where it's 18, 20 pages of different surveys. It's delivered in different technologies. It's asking similar-ish questions and then study specific questions, and you have to kind of think through what you're doing, and then you just submit it, and you don't hear it back, or you eventually hear back, maybe you are awarded the study or not. And so it just became very clear that this was, like, I think just the idea of what feasibility questionnaires is trying to do is a broken process. It's pharma and CROs trying to understand you as a site. And what's happening is they're trying to understand you the only way they can. They have to ask you questions. And when they get their answers, because of the competitive nature of all the pharma, they're not going to share those answers. And you as a site, this is some sensitive information, so you're not broadcasting it on your website publicly. But as a result, you have this many-to-many challenge where every pharma wants to talk to all the sites, and every site has to talk to all the pharma. And the only way to do that is these online surveys with 92 questions. And then what it means is you have this snapshot in time where if I'm a pharma company and Dan, I send you a questionnaire today, I only understand UMA clinical research on February 20th. Snapshot in time. Tomorrow, if you add more capabilities, if you expand a new location, take on a new therapeutic area, add a negative 20-degree fridge, in the coming weeks and months, you're a dynamic growing site. All of those things are going to happen. But me as a pharma, I'm going to be making site selection decisions off of old stale information from that snapshot in time. You're going to evolve. I'm going to make maybe some bad choices along the way, work with the wrong sites, work with the right sites. But like, I'm throwing so much burden on you to complete these questionnaires, and every pharma is, yet we're still not getting the right data to make smart decisions. And so with VersaTrial, we're really trying to think through an elegant solution where if you support the sites in completing the questionnaires, it can unlock a lot of really interesting insights as those sites evolve over time, and then allow, with the site's consent, the ability to directly broadcast that to the pharmaceutical companies so that they know that you've added a new location and you're expanding well in advance of the next feasibility questionnaire that they send out the door.
Right. And that, yeah, and that, to make matters worse, or even more complex, I mean, therapeutic area, therapeutic indication, these questions are often super specific to just like, you only need to know the answers to some of these questions because of a particular protocol. Otherwise, it's irrelevant information, even if it's the same sponsor for another study. Like they'll ask even more super specific questions for that study, even if the same pharma. So yeah, they're extremely complex. I think a lot of people don't understand that process, you being one. But let's get back to your career because I've learned to look at the co-founders, founders, CEOs track records. And in your case, VersaTrial is not your first successful rodeo in this space. So you want to talk a little bit about your previous venture in this industry and kind of how that played out?
Yeah, I've been really fortunate to find a career that I love and an industry that I love. I'll take even one more step back of what kind of got me down the path. I've shared this story a couple of times, but in college was kind of on a go to Wall Street, do the finance type of job track. I was an economics major. And my senior year over winter break, had some headaches, went to my doctor, ended up going to a neurologist, and within the next 48 hours was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and went
Wow.
through a very surreal in the hospital in New York City. Kind of, here's what surgery is going to look like. The location's not. We really don't want to do surgery. We don't know if the headaches and the tumor are linked, and we don't know how fast the tumor is growing. And so we'll be monitoring over the coming months, and we'll kind of figure out over the next 3 months what your prognosis will be. And I just had this kind of, not awakening, but a health scare gets you thinking differently about life. And I went back to college, finished up my senior year. Ultimately, the headaches were stress related. They weren't linked to the tumor. The tumor was slow growing and not something that will affect me in my lifetime, so no surgery needed. But for a period of time, it was very kind of like unsure what was going to happen. And I remember on the other side of it, just feeling so fortunate and knowing that, kind of came out very lucky, and recognizing that a lot of other people might not have had as good of a prognosis. And so just that got me thinking about health in general.
Mm.
And then I think it was just a year or two after that, I was really fortunate to get a job at the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research at a time when they were building out a new digital strategy team. And the founder there, the co-founder, Debbie Brooks, amazing person. But I think at the time, going into that, I always kind of viewed pharmaceutical companies as like the bad guys. And big bad pharma, make a lot of money. And when I worked at the foundation, she had a great kind of way of speaking to this to donors and to staff around, every drug, every vaccine, every cure, everything that has ever kind of progressed modern medicine has all been through pharmaceutical companies and biotechnology companies. And it all has had to go through this, 10-year, billion-dollar phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Like there's a process there. And so you have to choose, either are you going to be an outsider on that process, kind of like, shooting it down and complaining about it from the outside, or are you going to get involved and get in the mix and hold people accountable where they're making missteps, like what you were talking about with Craig this morning,
Mm,
but also recognize that you can't change things from the outside. You gotta be in there and be in the mix. And so that was really eye-opening for me. Of clinical research, drug companies aren't the bad guys. Like the bad things happen, but they are a necessary part of progressing the next wave of treatments and cures for patients. And that was exciting to me. So
absolutely.
that was
Wow.
a while back, and since then had some really interesting roles working in startups that had iPads in waiting room of doctors' offices and got to learn about the doctor workflow. And then most recently had a really nice opportunity to help build out a two-sided marketplace that connected pharmaceutical companies and patient recruitment companies. And it was through that lens that I kind of realized, man, sites have a really tough job. Every pharma is
Mhm.
sending you technology. Like I was one of those portals that was getting sent to Dan to be like, hey, log into our portal to get our patient referrals.
Thanks a lot, man.
And you're like, Mike, I'm good. I got a lot of other stuff going on. I don't remember your password and
Mike,
all these other
these
challenges.
patients don't answer their phones, Mike.
Yeah, exactly. And then and I'm like, man, this it's tough to be a site. And so I started going to all the site conferences and got to spend and meet a lot of sites and make friends with folks at sites. And in starting VersaTrial, just kind of said, every time I had been to one of the Site Solution Summit conferences, it's such an amazing experience because the transparency, the openness, the collaborative DNA of sites is there. It's very different than like a pharma conference. But I think when it in those moments where people are sharing about the challenges, there didn't seem to be a lot of people in the room with solutions or buildings or working towards building solutions. And it just felt like every year it was like the same challenges coming up again and again. And the only folks that were coming in with solutions was, I'm a pharma and this is my solution, or I'm a CRO and this is my solution.
Right.
But it was never a solution that worked for a site universally across your whole portfolio of studies, because you don't work with just one CRO or one pharma. You have 10, 20, however many. And so when they come with their solutions, it always felt like it was maybe helping them, but hurting you at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious. I mean, I'm talking about, but
No,
does that resonate
absolutely.
with you?
Yeah. The site burden has gotten uh heavier every year. Every year that the busier the industry gets, the heavier the site burden is. The more complexity of these trials, the heavier the site burden. Everything's kind of pushed on the sites, right? Protocols getting more complex because sponsors want they're not just okay with the primary endpoint. They want exploratory endpoints now and ad nauseum. As long as some sites out there say yes, we'll do it. It saves us money. Boom. But that means usually these assessments have some kind of portal. So now you're just adding complexity, site burden, all this stuff. All this stuff falls onto the site. So whenever you have these tech solution providers, us as site owners, we're very jaded. We're like, oh yeah, another one that's supposed to make our lives easier, but in reality make it harder. That's why it's so unique when we find companies like Viva, like VersaTrial, like Creo, which by the way, Creo is not free, but I still think it reduces the site burden enough to where I pay for it out of my own pocket. So no, you're spot on in your assessment. And I actually think we're just at the beginning of this stuff, because if we're at the beginning of this next wave of innovation, you know, monoclonal antibodies, CRISPR, gene therapy, you've got mRNA platform, you got all this stuff, microbiome, anti-aging. There's so much stuff happening, but who's powering all of that? It's sites. And I take it even a step further. What do we really mean by sites? Like, let's be real. It's a coordinator. Like
Yeah.
a coordinator is on the bottom of all this stuff, like lifting all this, doing all this heavy lifting.
What's what's so crazy to me is the coordinator at the bottom is the most important person in the
Yeah.
whole system. Like
And they
they
don't
are
even have a voice.
they are the front lines that are building that rapport and the relationship with that patient that's coming in week after week. And so what's crazy to me, it's early days for VersaTrial, but I really believe that people in the industry, have good intentions and things like that. I think it gets tough when I kind of go and talk to a pharma or a CRO, and we're like, look at the proof of like all the time we can help save a coordinator to make their lives better. And some people that have sat in that role or have that empathy are like, oh yeah, I can understand why that helps the site, but also why it helps me. But a lot of people kind of get a little selfish and like, well, I'm pharma A, like how does that give me a competitive edge? Like, why does helping the site actually help me? And they have the disconnect between, if I like, it should just be obvious. Like if you help a site, you still help a coordinator save time. Like what is that? What is the impact in your perspective? If you can save a coordinator an hour or two a day, like what does that mean in terms of their ability to have better time with the patient,
They're going to
more
do more for
recruitment,
your
more retention?
study. Here's my answer to those dumb people that say that stuff. Number one, you've never been a coordinator. Number two, you have no idea how research works at the site level. And number three, you expletive, don't you understand? If you make your study easier for your coordinator, when the PI refers them two patients, one for one study and one for your study, and the coordinator only has time for one of those that day, guess which one they're screening? They're screening the one where it's easier for them. This is what happens. Like when push comes to shove, this is how decisions are made. Eventually, that second patient gets screened no matter what. But don't you want to be first? Don't you want the majority of the coordinator's time, like their good energy when they're not tired, going to your screening and not the competitor's screening? That's why you need to focus on making life easier for these coordinators. They're executing your BS study with 10,000 exploratory endpoints.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that's crazy too is the amount of turnover. So, pandemic took its toll on everybody. It took, I think, an extra toll on folks in the research industry. You have the role of coordinator, which has all this tech that's being thrown at them, and all the challenges of trying to do as many studies as they can. And then there's the allure to go become a CRA or other types of roles that they can grow into. So what's your take on just the amount of turnover in that role in particular, and what that means for more junior folks kind of coming in and picking up an important study and not being equipped with the
That's
right
another thing. Yeah,
experience?
exactly. You've thought this through, Mike. This is why you're successful and you're gonna be successful again. Exactly right. That you take it a step further, turnover is gonna happen regardless. There's no way, like sites, you reach a limit at most sites of what a CRC can make. And there's only enough room to promote so many to site directors. I mean, and not everybody can be a site director if you only have one site. Okay, so that's one role. So coordinators to double their salary, typically they go CRA, in-house CRA, whatever else, a data manager, whatever. That means a new person comes in, usually an MA or somebody fresh out of college. They're coming into this site, probably busy from day one. Hey, you got to go figure out this study. Patient comes at 9. Well, it's a lot easier to go pull up this bookmark and see, okay, well, this study, these are the portals I need. Okay, do I have access to this one? At least you could figure out, right? Like this maze of like the portal. Let's just first figure out what are the portals, like what are they? Number one. Can't do anything if you don't know where the portals are.
What are they? And then even just getting access to them. Like
Access, yeah.
the other things that's been just so interesting to me, because I talk with a lot of friends at at CROs as well, and it's like just the amount of like the delay between the CRO knowing that coordinator has left. They now know that person has left. They now know who the replacement is, and let's go get them all the key credentials they need and get them
Absolutely.
plugged in. In your mind, what's that delay there look like?
Weeks at best. At best.
And then
weeks.
the amount of time on both ends of you trying to figure out, okay, what systems do they need and who do I have to ask for each study? Those folks then, administering it back to you, and then trying to even guess if you've, has the account been activated? Did the reset password? Did the link stop working? And then in the background of all this, I would very confidently say that a very large number of people that have left that site still have access to those systems, because there's not a great feedback loop around this person has left and did we confirm that their credentials have been removed.
Right. And in fairness to us as site owners, like we can only revoke access to the platforms we own. So like CRO, Viva, we have no control over the EDC. In our mind, it's the CRA's job when they see end date. They write in, I know because I've been a CRA. You put on your report, this person no longer active. You tell the sponsor internally, hey, please remove access. But that doesn't happen because CRAs are also busy and overworked too.
It's I love our industry because of the complexity involved, but the complexity creates just a lot of inefficiencies that make no sense in practice. Like if you could wave the magic wand, like what's crazy to me is there's a system that you are logging into as a site where you're logging to CRO on your end, so you have your staff there in CRO. But then a CRA who's working with CRA, they're logging into a completely different system where they have information about you and your staff and things like that. And so the amount of stuff that becomes two software technologies that don't talk to each other, which then get exported into Excel files, which then get reviewed and emailed back and forth and phone calls. At the end of the day, what it means is there's someone that left the site 6 months ago that still has access to a system because CRA didn't, receive that email, or they missed it, or they overlooked it. Now there's like a security concern, but it also meant that the amount of man hours just to get your new coordinator up and running on both ends was a very inefficient process.
Yes. And that's the part where sites, I mean, we're really busy now. I think this next decade, is going to be busy, and we're all blessed to be in this industry that's so rewarding. But it's a lot of work at the same time. I already know a sponsor that I'm never going to work with again, unless I'm desperate for a study and patient, therapeutic indications, perfect match at the time. Why? Because they put no thought, zero thought compared to the others as far as the coordinator burden. They put zero thought into it. And I don't blame the CRO, I blame the sponsor for this case, because I've used this CRO before and it's a completely different experience. So, it even benefits the sponsors to make life easier for those CRCs from the perspective of getting the good sites. And by good, I mean they have a track record of enrolling patients for your indication to want to work with you again. Like the leverage is on the site's hands now.
Yeah.
It's not on the sponsor's hand. There's way too many studies for all the sites to accommodate. It's almost like sponsors have to, like, treat sites well. Like, what a concept.
I talked to a lot of sponsors. I think there's a spectrum of, on one end of the spectrum, which is much more rare, is that they don't have the empathy at all. Like, that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Like they've never sat in those shoes, I'll never forget one person saying, I think sites should suck it up and stop complaining. And I have password challenges, so they have password challenges also. Right? And like that just blew my mind. But I think in general, most pharma, are not on that end of the spectrum. They have good intentions. They want to do right by sites. They just have a lot of priorities and things like meetings that fill up their day like anyone else, but they don't have a lot of tools to actually do right by you. Like there's not a lot of winning software technologies or approaches that can like actually immediately reduce your burden. So they have to just do what they've always been doing. So I think like a lot of them will do like good intention things like, okay, well, let's build a site portal. Let's do a site portal like that. It helps sites. But then in practice, doing that is just yet one more thingy for you to log into that only works for that sponsor's study.
Yep. absolutely. I have to
But
do.
there was like no alternative, yet it had good intentions behind it. I think shared investigator portal, a similar sort of example of like good intentions, maybe not so great implementation, but like just the intentions were good, but the solution ultimately didn't pan out.
Mhm.
Where I think the other good example is a lot of pharma are now setting up site advisory boards. So we want to talk to sites, we want to build a relationship. But what I've been hearing from a lot of sites is, yeah, I'm on 8 advisory boards, like it's that many to many challenge. And like, we don't really solve a lot of my pain in those meetings. Like, it's just kind of a little more superficial conversation. And I think those good intention pharma are looking for ways to help you. There's just not a lot of options out there.
It's good intention, but when the patient has to come in at 9 a.m. tomorrow, that's when reality sets in. Like good intention versus how do we actually implement this study visit and make it smooth for the coordinator. And unless we're okay as an industry with the CRCs kind of being like the med school resident, where they kind of just are told what to do and suck it up. I mean, it's just not a smart way to run your study when they're the workhorse of the study. So I think like big kudos to you guys, Viva, other tech vendors that are actually building solutions and actually listen to sites. I hope we're seeing the beginning stages of that in our industry because it's the only thing that's going to make this sustainable.
The one theme that I think is like also speaks to the complexity of the industry and why it's hard for progress to happen. If you think about it, most industries, the company that is buying software is the user of the software.
Right.
So if you're a Fortune 500 company and you need a customer relationship management tool, a CRM, you are buying Salesforce. And if your staff don't like Salesforce, you are going to look for an alternative option and you're going to switch vendors. And so as a result, the best technology usually, bubbles to the top. The problem in our industry is it's risk averse. So no one's going to give it like the opportunity to a brand new startup that doesn't have any logos on their slide. You have to like been in the market for a while. But then also it's the buyers of the software are the pharma companies, and they are giving your CRC, your new med school student, like 10 systems to use. But the pharmaceutical company staff have never logged in and never interacted with that software and never experienced whether or not it's good or bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a disconnect. And
It's
so as a
almost like there's two
result,
different three if you include the patients, right?
right, and then there's the thing that's going to the patient. So as a result, like what I think is the most unfortunate thing. I saw some of the funny posts that you and Brad have about like the recent conferences, like with Scope and DFarm and others. There's definitely an underrepresentation of sites at these things, and there is an overrepresentation of slick vendors that have good sales teams that are selling software to a buyer that will never use that software.
Right.
And the voice of the site is missing in those transactions. And so as a result, incumbents win and new plant comers get boxed out. And the folks that have the best sales approach and takes people out to the nicest dinners like can kind of stay in business, even if their technology is not effective, buggy, problematic. And I think what was the most telling experience I had recently is I was at a site and I said, hey, of all the things this past month, what has taken the most out of your morale? Like that's a good way of saying like, where is your pain? And it was like, oh, I'm using this e-source vendor, and it's got a major bug that's preventing me from using it. And I was on tech support for an hour and a half while the patient was in the waiting room, couldn't figure it out. They told me I should just go restart my computer, and then it was user error. I wrote up a document of all the steps to reproduce the bug. A week later, I sent it to my CRA when I was on the call with him, and he told me he would, escalate it up the chain of command, and I never heard back. And I don't even think he's my CRA anymore. And I've been using paper for the past month because no one came to help me. And like this was one coordinator that was struggling with a technology that was not working as expected, but didn't have a way to communicate that, like to bring someone to help her. And then when in that conversation brought the pharma in to say, hey, did you know that this was happening? And they were like, oh, I'm 3 steps removed. Like I get reports from the CRO. I don't talk to coordinators that often. I didn't know that this was a major issue. And you say, okay, well, if it's happening at this site, do you think, this study is being run at 50 other locations? How many of those do you think this was a problem? And the person says, oh, dear God, I hope it was just this one. And that's the complex industry we're living in, where buyers of software don't interact even with the users of those software and are creating pain for people that they don't ever interact with.
Yeah. Yeah. To them, it's just a box they can check off, like, okay, we see this as a problem. We paid for this solution, problem solved, basically.
And if I
Until
don't hear about it, ignorance is bliss.
exactly.
And in the middle is this, like a black, like a kind of a game of telephone, and no one's at fault to this. It's just the system is complex, where from that coordinator to that CRA to a report to the
Yeah.
pharma, that like that's not real time. That's not a full picture. There's always going to be inefficiencies that could be fixed that go unseen as a result of that process.
Do you think there's going to be a slowdown of pharma spending on tech solutions? Like,
Given the recent events of this past week, or just in
not
general?
just care access, but just in general. I mean, what you just said, like most of these things don't work as advertised. How much longer is this like blank check gonna keep getting signed?
I I hope I mean, I'm a software developer by trade. So
For you, that's good.
I hope someone's spending money on technology, but I'm a firm believer that I think the best product should always win. Like whether that's our product or not, like I think that companies should live and die by the quality of their products and the ability to improve those products over time. If you told me today, when I look at the industry and it's like there's a 10-year-old technology that has not changed a lot over the past 10 years, yet they are still like the incumbent in the space and no newcomers can come and challenge them. That to me feels like one of the main reasons why our industry can't progress and leap forward as fast as other industries have, because innovation slows down, innovation dies there.
Mhm.
It it's really interesting because I can understand why people don't want to take chances on new technology or new solutions, right? Like
Yeah.
one setback, like there's so much work and effort goes into research, but at the same time, if you know that things weren't working 15 years ago, and the costs involved in research and the amount of time involved, and if what we're doing today is the same as what we're doing 15 years ago, then we all lose. So at a certain point, there are reasonable investments to make, reasonable new solutions to try. And the only way to really do that is to not just be like it's very unfortunate, but most pharma companies will just say, do we already have, an MSA in place with you? Do we are we already partners? And if not, it's not worth working with you. Like, I'm sorry. Like
Mm.
that to me is just a broken system where it just, again, rewards the incumbents, can make them complacent. There needs to be a better way to on-ramp innovative ideas. And I think innovative ideas, especially that bring the value proposition to sites, because they're going to continue to be just as important as ever. And right now, I think a lot of pharma aren't as familiar with even what the challenges of their sites are, and are building solutions in a different room and then coming and giving you a solution rather than actually co-developing it alongside you.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of this is the CRO responsibility, right? Because the line is blurred. It's not like they operate in a vacuum. I mean, CROs build their own in-house tech as well to sell. And
Yeah.
I mean, so far that I know, none of it's competing with VersaTrial or Viva, but they're also tech companies as well, like to stay relevant. So it's almost like it's expediting the whole uh let's find another solution, or let's just get this because everyone else is doing it and we'll accept the mediocre ones just because it's kind of the status quo.
Yeah, I think CROs are a key part of our industry.
Mm.
Some CROs have their own technology, some work with technology vendors. I think where I think there's opportunities whenever I hear about, well, different systems and the lack of interoperability. And I think as an industry, there's just so many technologies that are point solutions. like just the number of acronyms we have to keep track of it.
Hmm.
EDC versus IRT versus ePro versus like each of those acronyms has 10, 20, 30, 40 vendors underneath it. And so
Yeah.
to create a comprehensive user experience for a site person or for a CRA or for the sponsor, like that's just really difficult to do. You end up jumping in and out of lots of systems all the time. And as a result, a lot of things fall through the cracks between those systems, or a lot of time is spent in Excel trying to put together a picture when maybe there's a better way moving forward.
Well, Mike, I mean, we could nerd out on this stuff for like 3 more hours, but um, I know you gotta go and we gotta do more of these because I think this is the first time I actually had you on my show.
Yeah, no, this is the first for me. I really appreciate you bringing me onto the platform. I read your book several years ago, and
Thank
it
you.
was like, thank you for that. That was a huge on ramp to like learn about the industry from the site perspective, and I really do want to give you a huge kudos for regularly putting out content. I have all of your YouTube videos downloaded on my phone, and I watch them on
Great.
uh, I go back through the old ones and rewatch them a couple times because as someone that builds things, like you like to build things, but in order to build the right thing, you you have to really put yourself in that person's shoes and understand like what their fears are, what their hopes are, and like what like is important to them. And it's hard to get access to sites and you know, be there while the patient is there, sort of thing. And so
Mhm.
your content has been instrumental in shaping VersaTrial and I'm sure shaping many other solutions in the space. So thank you for putting out all the great content.
Thank you, and thank you for making VersaTrial. I mean, it's an awesome product. We use it every day. It's free, and the staff knows how to use it. They see the value in it. And the feasibility thing's awesome. I know you guys are rolling out a bunch of new stuff. Somebody
Yeah.
was emailing me. I forgot her name. I'm sorry, but I got to get back to you. Uh,
Lindsay, our
there you
site.
go, Lindsay. Lindsay. I've been busy, Lindsay, but yeah, like I know it's cool stuff. I just got to get around to it. But there's lots of new things you guys have going on too. So we'll have you back on and
Yeah, for
discuss some
anyone
of
that's
those too.
listening, if you have password woes, definitely check out VersaTrial. We're looking to help you with that, some of those password challenges as well.
Man, yes, we all do. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody from Guru Nation. Everybody go connect with Mike on LinkedIn. His LinkedIn is underneath the video and in the show notes if you are listening. Thanks again, Mike.
Thanks, Adam. Really appreciate it.